to go?
hmm
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C. Baker. And before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And of course, this is season 4. So I do invite you to have a look at the 3 previous seasons. There may be some topic there that resonate to your reality right now. They are timeless. So I do invite you to have a look. And of course, we're going to jump right in. I have a great guest today. I'm really excited to have him on. I have Bill Amirault here today, and we're going to be talking about it. I think it's a subject that comes up quite a bit lately, but finding your purpose in the work that you do and where you are in life. This is a conversation I have with a lot of parents lately, and I'm really glad to have Bill on because he devotes his time to that. So thank you so much, Bill, for joining me. I'm really excited to have you on.
You're welcome and bonjour, Danielle. That's all the French I have for today, but glad to be here.
That's all good. And I hope I did pronounce your name properly for those
Yes, you
who are
did.
tuning in. Before we started recording, I was telling him my whole being wants to pronounce it in French, and so I do appreciate you letting me say it. Before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you
Sure.
got to where you are today?
Oh, sure. I'm a career development and leadership coach, and I've been doing this since 2013, so almost 13 years. Before that, I have an engineering degree. I did a lot of uh, work in that field, and then I went back to graduate school for business, and then I was doing marketing, advertising, product development, and market research for a number of years, over 20 years, both on staff and as a consultant. And then I went through the financial crisis in 2008 to
Mhm.
2010, and it was almost 2 years between meaningful gigs, and it was just an awful time in my life. And I remember going through the career doldrums, if you will, and saying, if I ever did this work with anybody else, what did I learn from this that I would then apply to that? And I also went through outplacement back in 2003, so I had a point of reference. And I was a career counselor as a graduate student in business school, and I would help the undergrads find their first job or get their first internship. So everything kind of came together in 2013 when a friend asked me to attend a job fair with him. And I said, well, what do you need me to do? He said, just talk to the people about what their career aspirations are and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll follow up with them later. Well, when I started working with clients after that, I realized it was a lot more fun to market and sell people than it ever was products and services. And I worked for some very well-known companies at Procter& and Gamble, Johnson& and Johnson, Shearing Plow, which is now part of Merck, Del Monte Foods, and others, both on staff and as a consultant. But the rewards I get from a phone call that says, I just got the job that we've been lining up for are really, really meaningful. And I've worked with people of all ages. The youngest is 19 when we started working, still in college. The oldest was 82. And
Oh,
I've worked
wow.
at, yes, and he was coming back into the workforce after his wife had had a health scare and it took a toll on their finances.
Mm.
But I worked with, men and women. My sweet spot is call it 35 to 55, manager, director, VP level, who are either dissatisfied with their current work situation or it just doesn't align with their own values or faith. And my book, Finding God's True Purpose for Your Career, is a front to back walkthrough related to that. And I like to say that I'm the Sherpa that'll get you to the top of your next career mountain, and that's the roadmap. And we can refer back to that at certain points. But as I best understand your audience of parents, often of young children, it's a hard time. It's a very hard time. I've been through that. My kids are now adults, but when they were young, it was difficult. So I'll take your lead from here, but that's a little bit of
Yeah.
my background.
Well, that's what I appreciate about your work is there's so much we could do because it is when you have younger children and now you realize life is not going to necessarily go as planned, and especially if you don't if you know maybe some of your children are not as healthy as you hoped they would be, so that takes a
Yeah.
toll financially as well, or budget cuts at work and things like that. And I like that you go even into the 80s because I also work with the MTMs, empty
Uh,
nesters
mhm.
who spend their entire life living for their children or through their children. And now they're sitting at home going, okay, now what? They don't remember who they were or what am I supposed to be doing now, or people that are retiring. And
Mhm.
now they really don't know what to do. So the fact that you work in our work aligns there is through values, through faith, and through so many different things that you're able to find what it is that really lights you up.
Hmm.
But let's before we get into that, let's talk about because you do work a lot on, when you reach a point where work just seems to be sucking the life out of you.
Oh yeah.
And off camera, we talked about burnout and all of those things, but can you maybe explain a little bit what's happening and why it happens so often that a lot of people in the beginning were really excited about this new job and all of a sudden it just drains you and you don't understand, you can't really pinpoint what's happening. Can you kind
Well,
of give us some wisdom there?
no, absolutely. I also have an extensive background in individual and team sports, and I'm going to compare it to that first, not just because the U.S. beat Canada yesterday in hockey, but just because it's relevant, to this conversation. When you're playing a team sport, you immediately know when there's a bad apple or
Mm,
somebody who's just not aligning with the mission or the goals of the team. And it's obvious, and sometimes if it's a talented player or something like that, you'll just say, okay, we'll put up with him, we'll put up with her, whatever, and we'll be okay. In the working world, it's a lot more difficult. I mean, attitude says everything about what people are willing to do or how they're willing to work with others in order to get to the stated goals of the organization. And I've had lots of jobs in my career, and I started delivering newspapers when I was 10 and a half. So between the 600 clients I've worked with and my own experience, there's not a lot that surprises me. But here are the telltale signs. There's two of them. Number one, how do you feel on Monday morning,
mm,
and how do you feel on Friday afternoon? Okay, if you feel like, hey, I'm going to work on Monday morning, you're probably in a good place. And sometimes it goes up and down. I mean, there are certain times and places and everything, and you just have to say, is this temporary or is this a longer term situation? Because if you have a problem, you can call everybody, there's hassles everywhere, but you have to identify when it becomes a problem. The hassles you just have to deal with and put up with and get through them and everything else. The problems are the ones that are going to literally suck the life out of you. And I've been there three times with very large, well-known corporations. I say, it's got to be me. These corporations are doing great. What's the
right.
it was just one of those things. In one case, I was in the wrong role, and the other two were just bad bosses. Okay. And there's nothing that can beat you up more than a bad boss. And it could, because it stays with you when you're going home. So then the Friday afternoon part of this is, do you feel like you've accomplished something? Do you feel like I'm looking forward to the weekend? I deserve this? Or do you feel like, oh, I'm going to drag work home for Saturday and Sunday? So look, whoever's watching this, you're going to know what those trigger points are. You immediately know. And it took me a long time to figure it out. I just kept thinking, wow, I feel awful, but I guess it must be me. Just, put your big boy panties on and make it work. It's not always the case. The
Yeah.
other thing is, and this is a concept from economics. I remember this guy that taught economics, he called it marginal utility. In other words, how important is using your time or your energy or your resources toward any one specific activity? If you overdo that, then it becomes diminishing marginal utility. If you underuse it, you're going to miss an opportunity. So all of the people on this call are going to have responsibilities with family, with friends, and that means extended family as well. Um, Work activities, volunteer activities, kids, spouses, whatever it might be. Ask yourself, legitimately ask yourself, when I'm in this circumstance with this individual or with this group or whatever it might be, am I replenished? Am I refreshed? Do I feel like I'm contributing, or is it draining me? And it's usually a very much a yes, no answer. And I find that women are much more attuned to that energy gauge, if you will, than men are. Men will be like, yeah, it's okay, no big deal. But women, not so
Mhm.
much. So pay attention to that. And then what I also do is when I'm working with clients, I make sure as best I can that the field of expertise that they're working in aligns with them, and the types of organizations that they're either interviewing for or they're working with already align with them. Because and I can show you this if you'd like, but there's a concept that came over from Japan, first made it to the
Yes.
US back in the 70s, called ikigai. And it's the meeting of four concentric circles that, if you're doing your Venn diagram in junior high school math, it's what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, what you get paid for well, hopefully, and what the world needs. If you hit all four of those, you win. You hit the
Yeah.
bullseye. Not just do you win, but everybody around you wins as well. And this is one of those situations like put on your own oxygen mask first and then give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Because if you're not filling yourself up, you can't you can't give from an empty cup. So I'll leave it at that. That's probably more of an answer than you wanted right now anyway,
No,
but
this
that's
is
a
great. And then
yeah.
I'm just like, oh, yes, because I love this. And it's so true because you hear it so much, you can't pour from an empty cup, but it's so true. And until you get that, you are going to keep draining yourself
Hmm.
out. And I don't know if you mind sharing the screen and just showing us
Oh,
your
sure.
diagram. If
No,
you,
not at all.
I
Sure.
think for a visual, and if it's not showing up, I'll make sure to add it.
And I think that should, are you seeing
There it
that now?
is.
Or?
Yeah, I
Okay.
see it now. So this is great. Yeah, for a visual, for those who are watching the video, that you can definitely have a look at where, and then you want to hit that bullseye you were saying, right?
This is the bullseye here, and this
Yeah,
is where everybody wins. And I'm taking a little bit of the text out of the book. This is page 6 because it's early. I want to make sure that people are aligned with what they want to be doing early before we do anything else related
yeah,
to either job or career search. But again, what you're good at, what you love doing, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. This one did not was not included in the first versions of this that came to the US. And here's the thing that's really important is the nuances of the definitions of the word. Ikigai is Japanese for purpose, and well, the English word purpose, or dharma in Sanskrit, but it really is more than that. When I did some research on it, it really comes down to, quote, reason to get out of bed.
hmm,
Okay, so this could be both career related, it could be other things related, volunteer related, it could be family related, like reasons to get out of bed. And obviously, from a career standpoint, you're going to get paid for it. But if you're not doing something that you're good at, um, or you're doing something that you're not good at, that can
yeah,
just derail the whole conversation from before it even gets off the ground.
right. And it's also something that you may be good at, but you just don't like doing. So sometimes you're good at something,
Exactly,
but it's not
exactly.
what you want to. It's not motivating you, or you're not in the environment that's going to motivate you. So it's a fragile ecosystem. I think if you're a little off tilt on one side, it just kind of moves everything around. So I like that visual. It's very helpful.
Well, there's another part of this, and for me, that was engineering. I was able to do the science and the math and do all this other kind of stuff, but I was like, I wasn't going to be stuck in a lab or in a back room or all of that. And for
Yeah,
me is when I took the Myers-Briggs in my mid 20s and I realized my personality was totally different than all the technical fields that I had spent lots of time, money, energy, and effort getting degrees for.
yeah,
And, I've spoken with men and women who are at high levels at different points in their career, and they progress, and all of a sudden the burnout kicks in, and it isn't so much burnout, it's misalignment. A little of both usually, but
yeah.
um, so I just fall back on that, and I say when I realized that going through what I had done and continuing to do that work was just not going to be productive. And
Yeah.
fortunately, it was in my 20s and not my 50s.
Right. Yeah, because then you can recover. I find sometimes
Yes,
you bounce back, although as you said you've been through maybe 3 times. I find that every other time it takes a little longer to
yeah,
recover from it or to bounce back from it. But I do like that diagram because it really gives you that visual of what is at play. So when you're thinking there's something wrong with you,
right.
it might not be it at all. There might be another factor there that's kind of bringing everything else down. I did have that brought up a question for me because when you work with people who come in and they really are not sure where they're heading anymore or they're questioning their life
Right.
decisions, uh, you bring in values, and that's the first thing I start with when we're talking about misalignment. Is usually you're
Hmm.
going against your core values, you're going against your non-negotiable, and this is where
Right.
everything feels off. Even if that's happened with me, where I had nothing to complain about at work. It was a good environment. There was room for me to grow. I was being supported. It just certain decisions at the time that were being made or changes in policies that were going against my values, but I was
Hmm.
disregarding them. How do you help people, or what's the most effective way you find in helping people to say, I don't even remember what my values are, or I can't even
Yeah.
tell you, I can't identify to anything right now. Where do we where to go from there?
Well, let me address. I'm going to do this in two steps. I'm going to address the first thing you said, like you were in a situation where you enjoyed the work, but you were not aligned with the decisions that were being made.
Mm,
So I tell people this, and this applies to relationships, this applies to friendships, this applies to work situations, and literally anything. You have three options that you can do. You can ignore it and just decide, okay, I'll deal with it as best I can, like ignore it. You can address it in whatever way you think is appropriate. And that could be, directly confronting some of the senior decision makers in terms of what their process was for going through it, or let them know how you don't think that was the best decision in whatever way that might mean. Sometimes that gets you in trouble. Sometimes, and sometimes getting in trouble is a good thing because then you know where you stand. The third thing is just go somewhere else. You really, that's the only three options that you have. And like like I tell people, the problems are things that I ignored them for a while. And then when I try to deal with them, I realized the ship was too big for me to convert in some cases. And so I would move on to other places. So that's number one. The second thing is I have a whole series of exercises. There are seven of them that address each individual. And I always tell people this. I said, look, we're going to start here with stuff about your past. Then we're going to go to several exercises about your present, your current, and these are how you see yourself in various situations. And then we're going to go to your future. And some of these exercises I've made up, some of them I've used with permission, and some of them I've modified based on things that I've seen through the
mm,
years. There are seven of them total. And what I have found is that when people go from the beginning, let's say their past and the things that have impacted them, key decisions, key events that have turned them into what they are today, to what the present is and then what their aspirations are. And I ask them to look at their aspirations, not from today looking forward, because that can be intimidating. But I say, look from your hospice bed backwards and say,
oh yeah.
this is what I have accomplished. This is what I've manifested in my life in whatever way that might mean. By the time we get through those seven exercises, they're guaranteed there are questions that nobody's asked themselves before. And my role is only this. It's clarification. I said, well, what do you mean by that? Does this mean left or right or however? And there are no right or wrong answers unless you tell me you want to rob a bank, sell drugs on the street corner, or take people out in a back room. Okay. Other than that, this is my
Yeah.
mantra in doing this work is God put us all here for a variety of reasons. Career is one of the most important. So it's up to us to define and manifest those reasons in the best way that we can. And everybody that I've ever worked with, they've made the best decision or decisions that they could at the time that they made them. And the stuff that I'm telling you about, which is the first 40 some pages of my book, is just a reframe. It's a reset. It's a reboot in whatever way that might mean. And when people have had, let's just say that they've gone through a layoff or a downsizing, or they got fired, and that's happened. All three of them have happened to me, and several others that have different names through my career. The confidence goes away, like
Yes.
self-esteem, just basic, like, wow, am I really worth anything? Well, the answer is yes. Okay. It's just a matter of making sure that you're in the right place doing the right things so that you can be the person that you were put here to be. So
Mhm.
that's what I was saying. I had to do that in two stages to answer the question fully.
No, absolutely. And that's you're so right that there's many layers there. But
Yeah.
I think I'm sure the listeners will appreciate that because we often it's when we get to that point where it's like, what's wrong with me? I thought I had the skills for this, and you're really not looking at the bigger picture because now you're in that survival zone of, and I think you do work with that as well in terms of when you're dealing with burnout and that fight
Yes.
flight, that kind of reflexes where you're not fully capable of making the right decisions, or your critical thinking may be a little foggy at that point. What would be your recommendations for people who may think they're going through a burnout? A lot of people don't know what burnout looks like, or what would you suggest or recommend in terms of what to pay attention to?
Well, two things on that as well. It may be burnout, maybe misalignment. The biggest thing is I ask them to go back as best they can into a situation or situations where they felt absolutely the best about themselves and everything that was going on around them. And it could be in any walk of life. It could be, you know, you were a ballet dancer
Mhm.
as a girl and you just felt like top of the world when you were performing because you were good at it, you enjoyed it, and all this stuff. So then I say, okay, hold on to those moments or those times in your life and then say, okay, what about your current situation is different from those times? Like, how do you feel about yourself and why? And have others told you as part of your current situation that you shouldn't feel good about yourself? I mean, you get a bad performance review or something like that, and you can just you can be sitting on that
Right.
for months. So again, when alignment is there and when purpose are you know in sync, things will work out. And the burnout happens again when it's like swimming upstream. You know, when
Yeah.
you're when the current is against you and you just can't push your way through it. And the biggest thing that I find myself doing, I say the biggest thing, one of the biggest things is just reestablishing an individual's confidence in themselves for what they are and who they are.
Mhm.
And there's no magic about that, but what goes on between your temples is really important as it relates to whatever you might be doing, like your self-worth, your self-esteem, and everything else. And again, I have the process that by the time we get to the other side and we start doing, how do you communicate your value proposition, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, in whatever way that means, that then it becomes much, much easier because it's like, oh, the why is clear. Now I'm going to say what and how on this document.
Right. That's so important. That makes it so much easier because the why and the how and
Yeah.
is difficult if you don't know the why. I mean,
Hmm.
so it's great. I'm going to throw you for a loop a little, put you on the spot because you mentioned earlier about when you're pushing through as a young parent.
Hmm.
Many young parents are just establishing their career, so they already
Hmm.
feel like they need to invest more time into the work. Uh, while sacrificing their time with their children. There's only time goes by so fast, right? There's only so much time you have to enjoy your children.
Right.
What is your advice for that, or how do you find the balance in, of course, with once you have your values, you're more aligned, you know where you're going, but how do you balance that out with work? You're trying to build a career to have a future for your children, but you don't want to miss out on their good years as well.
Well, my kids are 30 and 33 right now. Okay. And we still talk regularly. We visit regularly and everything else. But I'm going to go back to the time when they were 4 and 1
Mhm.
because my 4-year-old had bad allergies and asthma, and my 1-year-old was a light sleeper. And culturally, by the way, it was totally appropriate for the kids to sleep in the parents' bed, which was news to me until it happened. Okay, that's a whole separate conversation. So I was going through burnout in a big way. We were living in New Jersey and I was working in Manhattan on one position and in Westchester County on another. So I had an hour to an hour and a half one-way commute every day. And what I found was, and my wife was working full time as the director of a daycare center, and she would take the kids to either school or to daycare and then go to her job. But she would be home at 6:15. I wouldn't be home till midnight sometimes.
Oof.
So first, and it was just more than sometimes. But so the first thing is to assess. There's only 168 hours in a week,
Mhm.
and do a week long. How did I spend my time this week? And say, is this what you want to be doing with your time? There are times in a work situation, especially, if you're in tax season or something like that, and you're a tax accountant, March and April are going to be pretty tough. All right. Just this is the way it goes. And that's part of what you
Yeah.
sign up for. But it shouldn't be
So
unending.
long.
In other words, there needs to be a time where you can replenish and all that. So,
Yeah.
what amount of time, what kinds of things do you want to be doing with your kids? What are and when they're really young, you're not going to know, but when they get a little older, between like say 6 and 10, they'll start to give you hints about what they really like doing and what they want to be doing and how can you support them in that.
Mm.
And look, I played taxi for years as well. I coached teams where I would pick up all 10 players before a game and then get them, to the field. Um, so what are your kids looking to do and what do they want to be in their own circumstances and how can that match into yours? And the biggest thing I've got is that give yourself the grace to get some rest. And I know parents who are working shift, like one's overnight and one's during the day. They might, they're like ships passing in the night. They
Yeah.
see each other,
They
twice a
just
week.
tag themselves in. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Hey, tag,
Yeah.
you're it, and
Yeah.
and so I'm not going to say it's easy, but all I know is this. My parents raised six kids, and my mother started working again when my youngest sister was three, and she worked until she retired at 65. It
Mm.
was not easy because she didn't work for the first, for like from when I was born until she didn't work for 12 and a half years. But then when she went back to work, it was equally difficult. So I have to say, trust your instinct, trust your priorities. And this is one big thing that I've found both personally and with clients is don't overextend yourself financially. Because if it's great to have the big house and the nice cars and the vacations and everything else, but if it means sacrificing everything else to get that, you have to ask yourself if it's really worth it.
Mhm. It's such a good point. And again, it comes down to the values. If you're clear on your
Yeah.
values and you're clear on your boundaries in terms of this, these are hard no's for me, you're able to then say, between choosing working overtime or going back home and resting, you'll be
Hmm.
able to make that decision a bit less, how could I say this, less reactive to making the
Yes.
decision to say, oh, it will be nice to bring in a bit more money, but you know what, if you burn yourself out and then you need to take time off, it's not, in the long run, it's not going to help you. So yeah, those values are very important to keep in line.
Well, it doesn't end when the kids are off the payroll. I have a client right now who is in the Dallas area, and he's a real estate agent. Well, I'm working with him to move on from that. He's had a couple other careers before it, but he has two boys. One's a junior, one's a senior, who are college baseball players, about 4 hours from where he lives,
Oh
and
wow.
he makes it a point to see as many of the home games that they're playing in as he can. It's the only chance he's going to get to do it.
Yeah.
So, but his schedule is flexible enough, and he can do a lot of the work that he needs to do over the phone if he can get reception in the middle of nowhere to do this. So again, it's your life, it's your priorities, okay, and you can set
Yeah.
the boundaries in whatever way you think is appropriate.
I love that. Oh my goodness, I could talk to you about this for so much longer, but before we wrap up, I'd like to know, is there anything that you would like to share or add that you think would, with what we've talked about right now, that you'd like to add to?
Well, I'll say yes, but then I'll ask you, who would the type of people what is your audience? What would they want to hear about related to this topic, do you think?
Yeah.
And then I can address it in that way. The target audience here is really important. And I know it's mothers often, but I don't, what other things that come along, and you know your audience better than I do.
Yeah, and it's great that you mentioned that because it does depend on the topic, but I think everybody gets to that point, and yes, mostly mothers. I think parents or even grandparents,
Hmm.
in general. I do have that audience as well. I think it's in terms of oh, I had it and it just kind of slipped away, but in terms of how do you trust that you have the right values or that you are in that purpose. So you're trying new things, you're trying different things, and you're not too sure yet. How would you, I don't know if that makes any sense. How would you
No, it
trust
does.
that you're on the right track or you're doing the right thing? You're putting your energy in the right place.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with people, and I could put myself in this category, who at age 7 knew what they wanted to do. Like I
Hmm.
wanted to be a professional baseball player. Okay. I was too small, and I grew up in a part of the country I could only play 3, 4 months a year. That never happened. I played 4 years in college, and I did the best I could. And I played semi-pro for a bunch of years, which was great. So, Martina Navratilova or Steffi Graf or whatever, they knew when they were 6 or 7. And you look at the Olympians that were just on
Yeah.
TV for the last couple of weeks. That's rare. Okay. Usually people have to go through some trial and error. So
Mm.
what my litmus test is, did you 0 to 10, did you like what you were doing about that activity or being that kind of person who happened to be good at that activity? And then did you get better at it? In other words, were you like if you're um, if you're really a large, like you're 6'10" guy, you're probably not going to be a marathon runner, but you could be a really good basketball player. So
Right.
just look at yourself in a quote unquote objective way and say, are these things aligned with me? Okay. And can I get better at it? And what are my real aspirations? It turns out that only 3% of the people in the world have written goals about anything, which is amazing to me because I'm looking at mine right now. But
Yeah.
that said, some of it is trial and error. And the key thing is as you're going into a situation, have a number of questions available for you. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I have them about what the situation is and what your impact on the situation is. And just again, it's that Monday morning, Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
How am I feeling about this? And if your kids are running you ragged so that by Sunday night you're worse off than you were on Friday night, that's another thing. Like how do you manage that so that you don't get everything else drained for later in the week? Then the third option here is like in this world today, and this really wasn't as available even up to 5 years ago. Remote work is easily doable. And
Yeah.
companies who are saying remote work isn't doable are missing the point. We all went through COVID 6 years ago, almost, and people knew immediately who was contributing or who wasn't contributing. Because if you can do it remotely, you can do it anywhere. And there's
Yeah.
a thing called FaceTime in the office, and I've been there several times, believe me. So there's another aspect of, again, time management of your 168 hours in a week. I'm working with two clients right now who almost have to be remote because of small children and spouses who have jobs that require that they're away from home for a long time. So there's so many variables that go along with your question, but ultimately it comes down to, look, it's your life and it's okay to trust yourself with some of the decisions you're making. Again,
Yeah.
my only role is clarifying, guiding, or just pointing out where landmines are.
Yeah.
And
What I,
that's all I can
no,
do.
yeah, exactly. And it's what I like about your approaches. It's not a cookie cutter, magic formula thing. It's you're meeting people where they're at with
Yeah.
what they need at that moment. That may change later on. It's not solid. I also like that you mentioned the remote because I'm actually reading right now, currently reading the 4 hour work week,
Hmm.
which is so that the great insight. And that was the goal. And that was written back in the 1990s, I think, or something like
Hmm.
that. And he was already talking about remote work and having that flexibility with your time so
Yeah.
you can do and being effective versus being efficient. So you kind of nailed it there, saying, it depends on where you're at and your goals. Be clear on that and you'll get it. Not easy. Not easy when you're questioning yourself. You mentioned that earlier as well, is when you start questioning yourself to say, am I doing this right? Or what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do now? I do appreciate you sharing that because it is helpful. It helps people to know that they're heading in the right direction.
Well, there's one more situation that I have to point out here because I've had probably, I don't know, 20, 22 or three clients who fit this description. It's called single motherhood. And
Mm,
frankly, those folks are my heroes. And because they have to be mom and dad and provider and nurturer and all the other things that go along with it. And it's
yeah.
really, really difficult, especially when the kids are young. Hopefully, dad is involved at some level and it's not all on mom, but I've seen situations where it is. And it's really, it's a tremendous sacrifice and you're giving up everything else. It's family and work. That's it. So those
Yeah.
situations are what I would call exceptions and sometimes extreme, maybe not extreme in every level, but that requires a level of focus and a level of sacrifice that many other people don't have to deal with. There's still some leisure time and other activities that they can be involved with and not have to worry about it. I've known a couple of single mothers I worked with who had two or three jobs at one point just to put food
Hmm.
on a table, which is crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is. But
Yeah.
you're when you get to the other side of it, you're a better person and your kids will recognize what you did to sacrifice for them.
Yeah. They really do. You might not feel it in the moment, but yeah, in the end, the children see what the parent they did for them. So it is. it's a long-term investment, as I
That's
can
right.
say. Oh, and I could talk to you for so much longer, but before we wrap up again, can you tell us, is there anything new that you have coming up? Or are you working on anything right now
Yeah,
that you'd like
yeah.
to share?
Actually, it's completely unrelated to career development. Number one, I have a website. It's called careerswithcoachbill.com.
Yeah,
And I'm adding a bunch of things to that, but there's a whole separate project that may or may not be of interest to anybody. But back in 2007, I published a book called The 50 State Quarter Poems. I wrote 20-line poems about each of the 50 states based on my travels there and my experiences and what I knew about the state. And I'm going to republish it this year for the 250th anniversary of the US.
nice.
And I already sent you one example. I'm at 20
Yes.
out of 200 for poems around the world. My personal goal is to get on a plane or a boat or a yak or whatever it might mean and personally deliver these poems to every country, a dignitary in every country around the world. Now, I'm not getting any younger, so I got to, get on this, but um, those are the other things that I'm working on, besides, staying in shape and all the basic stuff that we do. But
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of unrelated to this conversation, but I took the
Well, that's
liberty of
good.
answering that in that way.
It's good to have things that aside from work, because we're always kind of into work, we're tuned in, but to have something outside, it's a great you're showing people what it's like to actually do something that you like aside from the work that you have to do. So I love that. And I did, Bill did share the poem he wrote for Canada, and it was beautiful. It was really well done.
Did it hit the
So
mark?
yes,
Was okay, good.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
no, it
good.
was great. So I can't wait to read the other one. So I'll make sure to share the link of your website so people can have a look. And of course, if people want to know more about the work that you do or contact you directly, is the website the best one to
I would say there are
have?
two. My email is the easiest one to reach me at, and it's my first name, last name, Bill Amirault, the number 7
Okay,
at Gmail.
perfect. I'll
That's
make sure
I
to.
have another email address that I use specifically for clients, but that's the one that I see every
Okay,
day. So
that sounds great. I'll make sure to add that to the description so people can reach out directly if they want to know more about your work. I really do appreciate. I'm going to ask you that one last question. I can't remember if I warned you about it, but I'm going to ask you what you want to be when you grow up.
yeah, no kidding. This is that answer's changed a few times, but
Yeah,
the fact that you think I'm not grown up is both refreshing and concerning at the same time. Um, but be that as it may, in all seriousness, the legacy project that I'm telling you about to write a poem for every country around the world,
yeah,
if I'm in my hospice bed looking back and looking at my kids and hopefully grandkids by that time. We have grand dogs, by the way, 6 of them, but no grandkids yet. Um,
love it.
if I can look back and say I completed that, that would be looking forward from today or looking backward from then to today would be like, okay, I hit the spot. So that would be what I want to do. I want to get between, both the financial and logistical um, resources that would be needed for that project. I want to be able to
Right.
put those together and make that happen. A lot of the other stuff that I wanted to do in life, I've been able to accomplish. And
That's
and
great.
then I also would like to say that I have supported a million or more people in terms of defining and manifesting their highest career goals in alignment with their values and their faith. Those two things would be when I'm grown up and I have more gray hair, which is probably hard to believe that I could get more, but more gray hair than I do now. Um, that would be a good thing to put on my epitaph.
I love that. I love that you have a little bit of both, and it's wonderful. And I like the approach of, I call it reverse engineering, where you're at your
Yeah.
end goal and you're looking out and said, okay, how do I get there? Which steps am I taking? And it does make it less overwhelming, I think, as opposed to looking, down. You're
Look,
at your start
yeah.
point, looking up. It's the view is much better at the top there. You can look
Well,
down
it's
and see where you can
if
go.
you're looking up and you're saying, "How the hell am I going to do this?" I mean, it's daunting. But if you look back and you start to break it, like you said, reverse engineering, absolutely, and we'll go from there. And by the way, I have to congratulate you. I have not read it yet, but I will on your book because
Oh, thank you.
just the title tells me that you hit the spot with it. And there's nothing more important than leaving the next generation or generations
Yeah.
with a world and with a self-interpretation that
Mm.
is constructive to a more peaceful and productive world.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, the title also reflected as something that I noticed, especially after the pandemic, was
Right.
now um, our children will at some point be sharing a boardroom table or conference room or something with somebody else from another world. So what we do with our children, it's not that we're just staying in our little town or our little
That's
village
right.
anymore. Everything we do affects the entire world. So um, yeah, we have to think of that as parents as well as the impact we're leaving world like globally as opposed to just within our family. So it's yeah, it's a little work, a lot of work, but it's I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying every minute of it.
I'm sure you are, and given what you had told me about your background that led into what you're doing right now, to me that's a perfect transition, and it makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense.
Thank you. I'll take that for sure. Coming
Yeah.
from you, you're telling me I'm in the right direction. That's reassuring. I love that. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed having you on. And anytime you want to come back on, if you want to share your journey with your poems, I'd love to have you on as well.
Oh, that's
And
good. I'll
yeah,
take you up on that. I mean, logistically, it'll be in the next couple of weeks. I'll be finishing up the website, and then I'm going to do several lives of each of the poems. There'll be 57 total with both the
nice.
territories and the total U.S. leading up to July 4th. And if I get an invitation to be somewhere important on July 4th, I will be there.
That will be
Um,
great.
which is, you never know. And but like Wayne Gretzky, one of my athletic heroes, by the way, used to say, "You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take."
Exactly.
And so that's I'm taking a shot with it this spring and summer, and we'll see where it goes. And people have said that they do like the poems and they do resonate, which is great. So
Mhm. I love it. And maybe there's somebody watching. If anybody's listening to this podcast and you can make it happen, please reach out. We'd love to give,
absolutely, yeah. And
absolutely reach out.
okay, thank you for
Excellent. So
having me on.
thank you so much. And for everybody watching or listening, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. Don't forget to go check out Bill's website as well. Or if you want to know more about his work, do reach out to him. And until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.